Hello, imaginary friends, and welcome to the Imaginaries Literary Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our podcast. We're going to talk about things like writing. We're going to do a lot of encouragement and giving you tips, tricks, and we're also going to do some book readings. So be sure to pay attention and look for those. I'm Caleb, and joining me is Daniel and Timothy, and we are the Imaginaries. That came from a group. We started a group long time ago, a critique group of each other's works, and we had some people come in and out, but it was always the three of us. At the very least, it was the three of us, and we've just been following each other's journeys, and we thought that we would start to do a podcast about writing and who we are and what we're doing. So this first episode is going to be about us, our journeys, so that you guys can get to know us. And I will introduce Daniel first. Daniel, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Okay. First of all, let me say I'm gonna have to pull what's his name, Peter Falk, like okay, all right, that kind of thing.
From The Princess Bride.
Yes, because
Yes.
I can't see the notes that I took to explain who I am. All right, so I'm a composer and a writer, as well as a teacher. Everybody always says educator, but it's the same thing. I've worked on several dozen films, though more than half of them were short films. I'm edging my way into video games, which I love to. I like to help the wee ones, and I like to discover the wee one inside each of us. I would like to discover your wee one. Okay.
We'll cut that out.
No.
So wait, you said that you're trying to work your way into games. In what sense are you working your way into games?
Well, I'm sort of I'm the lead writer on a game series that's still kind of in the cradle, but or maybe it's on the Sippy Cup at this point. But anyway, it's not grown up. It's very much in development, but still in development. And I'm also composing for like a world, I want to say, because it's tied to NFTs and it's like a game, but it's also a series of mini stories. And my wife is actually co-writing that one. So anyway, working on games, but most of my experience has been in films. So.
Is it so with these games, are they independent games, or are they like big games that are with like a bigger company like
Blizzard? They're not big yet. Yeah, no, my brother's the one with all the luck, like, and my cousin, like they're working on all these big, like they used to work for Microsoft, and my brother used to work for Blizzard. But like, I'm just the regular schmo. So, anyway, yeah, so yeah, I want to discover the wee one inside of me, the bit that still needs the important things that never go away, the bit that isn't afraid to wonder about things and just to wonder at things. And I take my inspiration from books, of course, and music and movies and shows, and from the multi-layered phenomenon that is nature. I love physics, which is probably the science I understand the least. But I always love things that I don't understand. I don't know, guys, but when I was far too young, I discovered the section of the school library that people in my grade were not supposed to use, and that's where
the restriction section.
No, yeah, it totally was though. Like I wasn't supposed to take it home, but like she didn't notice, because I was so tiny. I guess I don't know. She was like, "Oh, it must be. That looks like a nice book," and then I dropped it in a puddle. And then I had to buy it. But then I read it over and over again.
You had to buy it from the library?
Yeah, from the school library.
Yeah.
And then I assume they bought a new one. They probably just bought a bunch of like, I don't know, a series based on Greek mythology that may or may not actually follow it very well. But anyway, Howard Pyle, that's that guy. He did a series of really florid translations of Sir Thomas Malory. Got me obsessed with the matter of Britain, and I think I was like 6. So again, like only my heart understood it to begin with. And then this guy, can we see that? Yeah, we can see that. The other Briton, with whom I had a similar relationship, and then at the same time, I would not be complete without this. I watched an ungodly amount of these guys, And then, I feasted on C.S. Lewis, the Pernane Chronicles, nearly anything by Lloyd Alexander, The Bard Prince, and then The Adventures of Dumas, Stevenson, and the intensely clever, all-embracing Garcia Marquez. I don't know. You pretty much have the sense of me. Those are my inspirations.
So, did you got into reading at a very young age? Was that encouraged when you were a kid?
Yeah, like we had these classics. We called them the little fat books because we had like a whole shelf, and they were like this big, with like 20, 30 words on a page, and it would summarize more or less the adventures in all of these different books. And we had like everything from Mark Twain to Sewell to I don't know. Yeah, we had there was some Howard Pyle in that collection too, before I even discovered the real one. But before I discovered the real Sir Thomas Malory. Anyway, yeah, because I think those are really important, like making things accessible and exciting, but how do you do that but still maintain the mystery that people like me, and I think maybe you guys too, love so much? Like, you don't want to understand, but you want to try to understand. Like women. I don't mean that women try to understand and they don't understand. I mean that, like, that's my relationship. That's like why they're attractive, right? Because
you don't understand them. They're so different than you. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. You want to understand. And if you ever do, you'll probably die. I think that's actually like the unwritten thing. That's why couples die so close to each other when they're like 85, 87. I finally get it. Oh. Oh wait, I don't need the glasses now.
Okay, so we understand when you start your inspiration and when you started reading from a very young age. When did you start writing? When did you know that you wanted to be a writer?
I don't know exactly the age, but definitely young enough that we did not yet have a word processor, even, let alone a computer. Mm-hmm. Granted, we were not the richest people on the block, but I guess I should say in the city, because pretty much no one on the block was the richest person on the block. But yeah, we had a typewriter, and I remember clickety-clacking on that, and then showing my brother, and he was like, "Wow, I wish I could write like that." And it was like the best feeling I've ever had. Seriously, completely equal to the feeling when you guys say something nice. But it's like to have your older brother say something like that to you. It's it tells you that there's something important going on.
Yeah. Was that the moment that you knew, like, I want to be a writer?
It was the moment that I knew that I was allowed to try.
Oh.
And yeah, I'm grateful to him for many such moments. But
that's awesome, dude. That's great. So yeah, outside of gaming, what do you write? I mean, I know. I just want the people to know. I want everybody to know what you write, because you're such a good writer. So
thank you. Well, I'm working on a couple of books, and I've done a few short stories, but I haven't published anything because I'm also really, really bad at selling myself. So yeah, I would never make a prostitute.
Did you just say?
I would just be like, dude, you want it? You're gonna have to just, here it is. I'm not. There's nothing going on. I don't know. Do you like this? Come on. We got an hour.
We might have to move on now.
Okay.
See, I don't know how you're going to follow that, but man,
I can't follow that up.
All right, man. Okay, well. Now, Daniel, everybody knows. This is out there forever. Everybody's going to know who you are. That's great.
And who you're not.
And I love it. But anyway, okay, Timothy, let's jump to you real quick. Tell us your story.
Yeah, so my creative story is a little bit roundabout. In that I've pursued various different creative expressions at different times. I was really into animation when I was younger,
Yeah.
but didn't really have a way to pursue that, which eventually took me into filmmaking. So at about 13, I kind of like my creative brain kind of fixated on like filmmaking of like this is what I want to do with my life, and pursued that for another 13 years. um and for a big chunk of that, I didn't have access to filmmaking equipment, um and so because I couldn't make movies, I did the next best thing, which was I started writing movies, started writing scripts for movies because it was kind of the only way I could interact with film at the time. And I actually hated writing because I'm dyslexic, but I didn't actually
Yeah.
discover I was dyslexic till I was 20. And I started writing screenplays around like 14,
Okay.
15.
After you found out that you were dyslexic, did that change? Like, did you?
It did actually. It did. I actually started to enjoy both reading and writing
Yeah.
um after discovering my dyslexia, because prior to that, I struggled with words, I struggled with reading, I struggled with writing. um and so the process wasn't enjoyable for me. I'd get made fun of a lot because I make tons of mistakes. I still to this day I don't like reading out loud. If someone like it's like, here, read this out loud, I'm like, no thanks.
I'm sorry, Timothy. I am
I'm
sorry.
I'm sure that the pressure that you feel doesn't help the fact, that like, what if I screw up? Oh, I'm gonna screw up.
Oh,
And
for
that adds to it.
sure.
Yeah.
Mm.
For sure. Like I feel most comfortable when I can read something multiple times before I have to read it out
Yeah.
loud, because then I can kind of get a feel for what it is in the context to help me. But if someone just like hands me a piece of paper, it's like, read this out loud, I'm like, no. Flat refuse. um yeah, so it really wasn't something I enjoyed doing. But with books, I loved stories.
Yeah.
And so any story that was good enough would overcome my natural prejudice against reading.
Awesome.
Um, and most of those stories were fairy tales.
Okay.
Um,
Like
and
what?
so,
What were your favorite
Yeah.
fairy
Buttercups.
tales?
um, oh, so we had several like illustrated children's book collections, some Hans Christian Andersen, some Brothers Grimm. There's one particular Brothers Grimm story that it's a very rambling story. Like, I try to tell people like a quick summary. There's no way to quickly summarize it because
Because it makes
it
no sense.
starts with this king who has like 13 kids, and then he gets lost in the woods, and he meets this witch who'll like help him get back to his castle if he promises to marry her daughter if his wife ever dies. And
I know the
he
story.
he agrees, and so she shows him the way, and then like within the year his wife dies and the witch shows up with the daughter. He marries, but he's worried about, he doesn't trust his new wife because her mom's a witch, and so he hides his kids in this magic castle in the middle of the woods, and he has this magic ball of yarn that he uses to like find the way to get them. And the new queen is suspicious because he keeps disappearing. So one day she steals the yarn, she finds out about these kids, and like makes these magic cloaks that will turn them into swans, and steals the ball and like goes out, and all of them come out because they think it's their dad coming to visit, and she throws a cloak over them. They turn into swans, all except the youngest, who's a daughter, who watches all her brothers get turned into swans, and she runs away. because she's afraid of her stepmom, and is like wandering through the woods for like several years, and then stumbles upon this like thieves' cottage where her brothers like come in as swans and then shed their skins, because at certain points in the night under the moon or something like that, they can become human again. And so she reunites with them, and they tell her how to break the curse, which she has to like weave cloaks for them
Oh my gosh.
over like the course of like 5 years. And during those 5 years, she
Out of
can't
their own
talk,
feathers?
laugh, or smile.
Oh,
And so
Benedictine.
so she goes on this like, she starts like foraging materials to like weave these cloaks, and then she gets chased by hunting dogs and runs up a tree, and it turns out it's this king from a different kingdom who like gets entranced by her beauty and ends up marrying her. But her new mother-in-law is like also a witch and keeps like stealing the babies away when she gets
this
pregnant.
story about?
It's like the most rambling story, right?
This is how you know it's a real fairy tale.
Yeah.
But this was one of my favorites as a kid.
Yeah.
But it's like the most rambling story.
What the heck would the query letter look like to that story?
Right.
And
Right?
who anybody who's watching this, I would like to hear you try to write a query letter for this, because it's the worst ever. I hate writing query letters.
Your one-line pitch.
What's your
just-
one-line pitch? Impossible.
Imagine the Modern Family that just wouldn't quit. Really, there were just that many parts of it, and half of them are swans.
Okay. Anyway, so continue on. So those were some of your inspirations.
Yeah. So those were some of my inspirations. But I didn't enjoy reading in and of itself, and I didn't enjoy writing in and of itself. It was kind of a means to an end, which was I wanted to make movies, and I was at a point where I couldn't make movies, so writing was the next best thing. So I wrote film scripts for quite a number of years. When I discovered my dyslexia, or got diagnosed and discovered about dyslexia and what it is, how it works, it kind of opened up a new, or not new, but a love for reading and for writing. Because up until then, my goal had been kind of like, I'm writing now, but like I just want to be doing other stuff with film. Once I'm able to, I'll drop writing. But that really made me fall in love with writing. And so I continued writing film scripts, continued being involved with film stuff, and actually got more involved in the industry itself, but continued writing on my own, and started dabbling with short stories and things like that. And then when I was about 25, so after I'd been in the film industry for a good 5-6 years and worked on a number of films and a big mini series, as crew, not in any way in a creative capacity, but minion. I basically got disillusioned with film as a creative art form.
Yeah.
And walked away. And I actually stopped all creative things for about 9 months, I think. I just walked away from everything. And then started writing stories.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And at what point did the swan feathers come on?
Did the what?
Was it after 9 months?
That the Swan Brothers came out?
The swan feathers came off.
Oh.
The swan feathers. It was like giving birth to your to your true self.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was about 9 months. that I started writing short stories, and within probably about 6 months of that, I started writing my first novel.
Right on.
And I've since written 11.
Fantastic. Yeah.
None of which are published because,
Not
like
yet.
Daniel,
Not yet.
because like Daniel, I don't like to put myself forward. Um,
I guess you could just describe it
then. Yeah. So that's kind of my creative journey, and I'm at a point now where I'm really desiring to pursue publication.
Awesome.
To be able to put my stories in print, because I now have like this back catalog of stuff that's just gathering cyber dust on my hard drive.
Yeah.
You know, that
Great
I would
stories.
love to actually put out, you know, and be able to hold in my hand as well, you know.
Yeah.
I feel like there's something very special like holding your work in your hand, because writing is can be, at least on a computer, can be very non-concrete.
Yeah.
You know, it's files, it's where like you don't have a sense of having accomplished something
It's
in the
wet
same way
concrete.
that holding something in your hand does.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I made this. It's like, well, it's there. You know.
I get that. I totally get that, man. So tell us, what do you write? What's your style? What kind of books do you write?
So I love classic fairy tales.
Surprise.
Surprise still.
Surprise.
I write a lot of what I would describe as neoclassic fairy tales.
That's a good way to put it, man. Yeah.
And I love George MacDonald, particularly, is one of my favorite authors. One of the great fairy tale writers. If you've not read George MacDonald, like, he is amazing. So he's one of my literary heroes. Also love Tolkien's work. Both his Middle Earth stuff and his non-Middle Earth fairy stories are incredible.
Yeah.
If you've never read Smith of Wanton Major or Farmer Giles of Ham, I highly recommend those. They are wonderful little journeys into fairy.
Awesome.
Both of them. Yeah, so I love fairy in every form I come across it, in nature, in music, in stories, and on its rare film appearances. Yeah.
Well, our childhood would have been like your heyday, because Disney would take fairy stories and make them into animations. They would change them dramatically.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, I feel
make
like
them make too much sense.
They cut down all the journeys.
Well, now they're even ruining them further with their live actions, where they're explaining everything to the point where there's no mystery, there's no fairy left. They remove the fairy soul of all the fairy tales,
of course,
by over explaining.
Yeah.
But each time I truly believe maybe this. I haven't seen the Little Mermaid live action, so please, if you've seen it,
I've given up on all the live action ones.
We're gonna go.
I watched a few when they started the trend, and yeah, it's disheartening.
Yeah, it is super. It's super discouraging. I remember when they came out with Snow White and the Huntsman, and I was like, okay, that was not great, but it was something different. It wasn't Snow White.
It was a cool idea.
It was exactly.
Like the premise.
And I thought it was I thought it was really I thought it was interesting because we're going into a completely different world with crazy fantasy creatures, and Snow White has like more magical powers than just like whistling and or singing and talking to animals and stuff. So I was like, oh,
which is
that's
pretty serious when you think about it.
yeah,
but
of course, yeah.
I would love to
just
talk to
did,
animals.
in the
My
Disney version,
goodness.
she just didn't use that power to its
Yes.
full extent. It's
Right.
continue.
Right.
He could have like talked to a bull and been like, go gore the witch. Just
right, exactly.
But anyway.
But she didn't have that kind of heart. But anyway, but yeah, so I thought that I was like, oh, that's interesting direction. They're taking a new look at it, which is cool. That's fine. But then they did like, I don't remember if it was Beauty and the Beast that was the first one, or if it was Jungle Book or whatever, but it was like almost shot for shot, really poorly redone movie, just live action and bad CG. And I was like, well, that sucked. Like there was no magic to it like in the animation. Like the animated film, I remember I was very, very young when I first saw that, and it blew me away. And I was like so frightened that the beast was going to destroy Belle, and like all this, like it had all the emotions for me.
Definitely a favorite.
Oh, and I thought Belle was beautiful, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then like I watched the live action, I'm like, this does not have magic. And the singing wasn't nearly as good. And then Jungle Book was the same way. I was like,
some of the singing was good. Some of the singing was good.
Sure, but it didn't have that magic.
Somehow they managed to be really good without the heart. I don't know how. How do you even achieve that? Like there was a lot of artistic excellence, but just it was revolving around a void instead of the heart.
Because they didn't invest in the creative aspect of it. They invested in it was a money grab instead of a creative endeavor. Like they weren't breaking they weren't breaking any ceilings or breaking any creative ground. It was just like, hey, this made us money. If we do a live action, we're going to make a ton of money from it. And so then they started continuing on, and now they're like even more further away from creativity. It's more just money, diversity. That's their big thing. And it's not about the actual story or the actual meaning from the old stories that hold a lot of meaning. And so I feel like it's bankruptcy to gain money. So they sell their soul of creativity for $1, and that is really sad.
Especially if you are, an actor or a, cinematographer, someone who comes in and thinking, I love this character, I love this world, I want to see what I can add to it, and they come in genuinely wanting to do that and believing maybe I can contribute to something, and I truly believe that at least 90% of the people who are working on these films actually mean to create something beautiful and meaningful and something that's going to add to the story rather than just somehow eliminating everything about the story that works. And it's very sad to realize that like maybe a handful of people are basically just saying, here are all your shots.
Yeah.
I have this great idea. Here are all your shots.
Well, there are definitely stories from behind the scenes with like Marvel films now, where they're not even like the director's coming in and they're not having any kind of creative say. They're just there as a figurehead, and it's already decided. Like, here's the shot, here's the script. Like, just shoot it like this. Just be done. This is how you're doing this film, and it's like, where like you're signing on for what? Like, as a director, you're supposed to be putting your interpretation of the script forward, not what somebody else is telling you to do. And then you have no say in it. It's more the producers who have all the say. That's so backwards because the producers should have a completely different mindset than a director. The director has one mindset, and the producer's mindset should be that the director's vision is being on the screen.
Be facilitative, yeah.
Yes. And I feel like it's flipped like nowadays, especially with big budget films. Indie films, you can still find some great directors who are like pushing, and then you have you have Christopher Nolan, and he has complete control because he has a name. So he can do whatever the heck he wants, and it's not a perfect piece of art, but at least he's trying to put something on the screen that means something and is creative and whatever. So I just went on a long rant. I'm sorry.
We went on a long rant.
But getting back to you, Timothy, you're talking about your, like, what inspired you and what you write now, and what are you working on now? Like, are you working on anything right now that's outside of fairy stories, or are you still just doing fairy tales?
Mostly fairy stories still. I'm gearing up for a new project, and working on working with an illustrator who happens to be my wife, for on a short story, a fairy story that I wrote, that
Awesome.
we want to release as an illustrated book. My most recently completed project was a little bit of a departure from fairy. Was a series of 26 little kids books, based on the alphabet. There's a book for each letter of the alphabet, and each book fully alliterates that letter. So
it's great. It's great, and it's in the description of this video. So click on it, buy it, please. It's really good. I bought it. It's great.
For the dyslexics out there, did you also publish a backwards version?
You can just read the series in reverse.
Okay. That's my only insensitive comment over that. And I wouldn't say it except that I'm talking to you. So
I would say that it's probably your 15th insensitive thing of today, but that's okay. We love you, Daniel.
I don't need to do it.
That's part of what makes it so great.
That's great.
Please continue.
Yeah. So I created that series for my daughter, as she was starting to learn to read and learn to read through the alphabet. Created these little books. They're really fun. My wife illustrated them, and so that was kind of the first project we did together, with her illustrating. Now we're working on a short story, and then we're going to be tackling one of my books that she'll be illustrating, and then we plan to publish that book as kind of our first.
As in self-publish, or are you going to try to go traditional route?
Still going back and forth. I think I'm kind of at a point where I'm getting desperate to get something out there.
Yeah.
Just for my own,
like, really out there,
for my own motivation to continue writing.
Got it.
So I think what we'll probably do is set some kind of deadline for when we want to be published by, and then if we can find a traditional route within that time frame, great. If not, I'll probably self-publish just to be able to put it out there and
cool,
have something to start building momentum around. So
awesome. That's great, man.
Yeah,
that's cool. That's really cool.
So Caleb, who exactly are you?
Who am I? Where do I begin? I was born. No, I'm just kidding. Come on, it's a literary podcast. We got to talk about.
Yeah.
But anyway,
yes.
Okay. So I am born. There are so many similarities between all of our stories, which is really funny because and then we have a lot of, like, non-similar. I'm talking really poorly. We have a lot of similarities in our upbringing.
Good job, you're a writer.
So yeah, I know. Right. So for me, I have a really weird upbringing. I was homeschooled, and in my homeschooling, I just was not interested in reading, and I wasn't pushed to read. I think that the first book that I was made to read and write a report about was Moby Dick. And I don't remember how old I was. I don't remember what grade it was or anything like that. I just remember hating it. Absolutely.
That is a
hating it.
bizarre book.
Yeah.
In fairness, it's a weird book.
And not only is it a weird book, but it's heavy. And it's like, I went from reading like Go Dog Go to Moby Dick. I don't know, like, where do you go from there? But I do remember being young, and my one of my older brothers was writing a book, which was a complete ripoff of Star Wars, but it was awesome. And and what we would do is my brother would write some of it, and then we would like play it out, like with our imaginations, like through the house. Like we were just like, all right, the next scene is going to be this. And we would just like have it run out. And then he would go down and he would like write it. And he got bored of it or something and like gave up on it. And I was like, well, then I'm going to finish this book. And so I was like, this young kid didn't know how to write, didn't know how to do anything. And I'm just like clacking away on this really crappy computer that was like given to my dad. And it's like, to boot up, it had to like, we had to like put in the code for it to start. Did either of you guys have that? It's like, it was like the oldest computer ever. And it was like, run, enter, execute, enter, done. And then we were like, then it would log in.
That makes me happy.
And I would get like a notepad and like write it out. And so we were writing a book, which was essentially Star Wars with a couple of different new aliens and like special powers. And we wrote it in like Paint or Notepad or whatever it was. I don't even remember what it was, but that was like my first attempt at ever writing anything. And I loved it. I had such a blast. And so I would like walk around with the old school composite books, and I would just like write short stories and then like give them to my siblings to read and be like, hey, let's play this. Let's act this out. We didn't have a TV for a long time as a kid, so I really just used my imagination and would write stuff down. As I got older, I wanted to be a filmmaker. So surprise, surprise, all three of us worked in film. That's actually how we all met. I grew up and I didn't think that I would ever make it in film. I didn't think I would ever write anything except for like short scripts. And so I would do like indie films, or like I would do my short films here and there. And then I got an opportunity to go work on some indie films. And then I started working on some big budget films and like traveling around the country doing films and stuff. And similar to Timothy, I got really disenchanted with it. I started working on a lot of union films, and I was non-union because I didn't know what any of that was. I was still like young kid and just kind of like making it because I was doing indie guerrilla filmmaking for like however long. And then
as long as you still look like you're 12, they're like, okay, you're not union, but
and man, let me tell you, I looked like I was 12 until I was like, I don't know, 28 years old or something. So like if I shave, I still look like I'm like 18 something. So anyway, it was very interesting. But as I was working on films, I was doing a lot of producing. So I was working with a lot of producers, and I was reworking scripts with them. Like on the fly, I was working with actors. I was feeding actors lines. So for a lot of the movies that I worked on, I actually gave lines to some actors, and they used them, and that made me feel awesome. And I was like, this is great. Like that's a creative input. Like there's three writers in a film. That's the writer, the director, and then the editor. And I loved those three roles. And I realized that that's what I wanted to do, like one of those three things. So I started working on, I started getting serious about my script writing. And I was still writing short stories here and there. And I would always have an idea for like to write something. And I was like, oh, great. Like I can make this into a movie or a script or something. I was like, well, this would be a little too big budget, but maybe I'll write it. Maybe someday I'll make it or something. And then I met you lovely people. And
we just had the whole budget. And we were like, here, make this movie.
No,
I really wish that were the history of.
I wish that would have been amazing. That would have been awesome. Yeah. But Daniel came to me. I was in my office, and I
came to you.
Daniel's wife's office was next to mine. And so he would see her every day. And then that's how Daniel and I like started hanging out and talking. And Timothy was in an office across the hall. like across the common
Yeah.
room. I think you were across. And so then we would talk all the time, and we had like mutual friends in the office and stuff. And so
Oh, nice.
I went to, or Daniel came into my office one time, and he was like, "Hey, do you want to join our super secret writers group?" I was like,
Uh,
yes.
I'm pretty sure I asked Timothy first.
Yes, of course. Yes.
Yeah.
You guys had started, and then you invited me to come join along with some other people. And I was like, heck yes, man. And so I came up, and I came to a couple of the meetings, and we were reading Daniel's story and Timothy, one of Timothy's and one of Daniel's. And I think our friend Matthew, I think he had either a script or Neil had a script. Somebody had a script, and they were and we were reading
Matthew.
them. And it was fun. And it was a blast. We were having a great time. And this one week, Timothy turned to me and said, "Hey, I want to read some of your stuff." And I was like, "Oh, I don't have anything in me." And you were like, "Yes, you do. You have a novel, and I want to hear it." And I was like, "Okay." I was like, I have a short story that I think I could, I'll write a short story for you. And so I started writing a short story, and that short story turned into a almost 200,000 word novel. And it was wild, way too long, way too crazy. And you guys gave incredible notes to make me change it. And that was like the first novel that I ever wrote. And from there, I've now written, I have 5 novels done, and I have 2 in the works, and then millions that just keep popping up in my head. And this is what I want to do. I absolutely love writing. I love what it gives me. Like, I feel fulfilled. I feel super creative. It's an awesome creative outlet. And I feel like I'm getting better and better at it. With every book, and with like almost with every sentence, I feel like I'm getting better. Not that it's that difficult, because I wasn't great. but now that I'm starting to get okay, it's like, okay, here we go. So yeah, that's pretty much my story, which is very similar. There's lots of echoes of the same thing that happened to you guys that's happening to me, like filmmaker turned to writer, and getting a lot more fulfillment out of it. I think that I would still like to work in film at some point. I would love to direct a book that I wrote, or anything that I wrote. I think it would be awesome to direct that on a big scale, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't know. I'm holding on to that dream, and we'll see what happens. But first, I would like to get published. That's my goal right now. So
I want to put a plug in there for you. Like, you're reminding me of that first experience with that first book, and your tenacity is, well, obviously it's essential, and you can't just scribble a thing off and expect that's the best I could do.
Right.
Even if you don't expect it's the best thing anyone's ever going to have read, you also can't expect it's the best thing that you could have produced. Right.
Right.
But that, I think a lot of us would prefer to go that way, where we want the instant gratification, and with that we want to move on.
Right.
To further gratification. I want something new now. I'm done. But you never felt satisfied until you could tell by the looks on our faces and the sounds of our voices when we reacted.
Yeah.
That it really was improving, and that it, that you'd hit the right chords, and that, and that we were getting excited about your story.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
It is a completely like, taxonomically, it's probably in the same phylum as the original work, but that's about as far as I would go.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Those are some big words, but we're in a literary podcast, so it works.
Except, half of the people who enjoy writing probably hated their science classes. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah. You tell us in the comments. Did you hate science? Yeah. Do you love it?
Yeah, and Caleb, just to kind of add to that, my first work was atrocious. Apart from the inherent dyslexia of it, you know, I'm embarrassed. I want all of everything I wrote before I turned 26
Yeah.
to be burned
Oh, no.
upon my death. You know, I don't want
No.
any of that to be published
Wait,
posthumously because it's just awful. It's just absolute rubbish.
wasn't the Torchlighters thing from before you were 26? Or
No, that was
That was
I wrote
26.
that was 26. That's
that
the
was the
first
first
thing
one.
that
Okay.
that's the first
Okay.
thing that I'm like, I'm okay with this.
Okay.
Which is-
Because
which
that's
was
the first
really
one
good.
I remember. So
Yeah.
I'm glad
Yeah.
you're not saying that about that. That was good.
I'd written I think 14 feature length scripts prior to switching. So I managed to get a lot of that out on my screenplays that will thankfully never see the light of day before I switched to writing books. But writing and storytelling is a skill that you can develop regardless of what your innate talent level is when you begin.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's far more important that you write a lot and often than that you're naturally talented at writing.
Right.
Agreed.
You know, I've met people that like I've read first drafts of their like, oh yeah, I just wrote this, and I'm like, it would take me 10 drafts to get to this, but they don't ever write, and so like they've never gone anywhere as writers
Right.
because they just, you know, they've written like 2 little short stories and that's it. And they talk about writing books, but they never do it. So I think it's far more important if you enjoy writing, if you want to write. Now the people I'm thinking of haven't ever pursued really any creative thing because it was just they didn't have to work for it. So
well, what's that?
Right.
What's the old adage is like hard work beats talent every time, or like
yeah,
it's something. Hang on, I need to look it up.
There's
now.
also there've been studies done that to master any craft, you have to spend 10,000 hours doing it. And at that point, it doesn't really matter what your starting level was. If you put in 10,000 hours doing anything, you're good at it.
Yeah. The saying is hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
That's well put as well.
Yeah. I think that's great. Like that is so,
yeah.
It's so true.
A bit pithy, but true.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a basketball coach who said it. So, I mean, no, I'm kidding. No shade on basketball coaches or sports or anything. But I think that the biggest failure of anybody who is somebody who gives up on that creative endeavor. Like it's such a tragedy when somebody starts writing a book and doesn't finish. And I've met so many people that have really good idea that needs like, they just need a little bit of tweaking here and there, or like a push to just finish. And then it will be something awesome, something way better than mine. Like something.
Well, and frankly, they need a community.
Yes.
Like I don't think I ever would have finished my first book if you guys hadn't been there, sort of, you know, bottle feeding the thing with me. What'd you say?
Hounding you.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I can't believe you had to bear all of that. Like it's so rough.
Was that an illusion?
Yeah. Yes. What a tragedy. If you didn't finish that book, they would have had to call the warden to get me off. You're like, I would have been so mad. Come on, I'm trying to work into your book here.
I know.
But no, it's his book is fantastic, and he has a character named Bear. He has a warden character, and all these other things. But it is fantastic. Both of these guys, Daniel and Timothy, have just been incredible writers since I met them, and it's super inspiring. And to have a community with people who give gentle critiques and sometimes very harsh critiques in a great way It's so good for anybody. If you're out there and you're writing and you don't have a community, find one right away. Find people that you trust, find people that will give you honest feedback, not just, oh, it's great, I love it.
Right.
You got to find people who will tell you like, hey, this is really good, but you got to change some stuff, or hey, this isn't very good at all.
Yeah.
Because you won't learn. You really won't learn.
But I feel like, yeah,
And I feel like you need to find people that believe in you.
yes. Oh,
Right.
100%. 100%.
they have to understand what the creature is before they can help you to sort of rear it, you know. So they have to understand what it is, and then they have to be honest with you. But they also have to like want to help you get better instead of just being like, my primary goal is to shut this person down so that they stop doing it. You know?
Do you think that that takes a fellow writer, or do you think that anybody can fill that role? Because I would think that it would have to be a writer. I think
that's best, probably. That's
ideal.
Yeah. Because if you don't understand why someone would write, then you can't approach it. I mean, that would be like, you know, I'm a cellist, right? So I can't go and criticize somebody's sax playing, because even if I kind
you
of
could
understand
probably
the nuances
criticize
of
mine. Just throwing that out there.
I don't know if this is a good analogy, Daniel, because they're even in sax and cello, there's still
you're
the
right. It's not a
fellowship
good
of
analogy.
music.
It's
So
a bad one.
It
You're
is.
right.
It's bad. I think
because
that
I could criticize it within, like, musically,
yes, exactly,
without saying like, I'm not a sax player, but let me listen to you for a while and see if I can. You're right.
But I think
Actually,
like if you're going down that line, it would be like a cello player critiquing a basketball player. Like, hey, your dribbling isn't so great. And, you know, a cello player who doesn't play basketball, who's
and I was
just
also
like,
a bad basketball player. So
oh, well, you're tall, so you're good because you're tall. But anyway, no, but I think you're right. I think that there's still something in there if you have a cello player who really cares about the basketball player and gives them some sort of encouragement at the very least. So if you have a cello player in your life who is encouraging you to write and pushing you to write, I think that that's awesome. But
I think we need that.
Right. But if you could get a saxophone player or a fellow cello player to give you feedback on your music talent, specifically your cello playing, your bow and finger and all that good stuff.
That's good. You did some things there.
Yeah. So like, I feel like that would be ideal. But if all you can get is the basketball player's input, then freaking take the basketball player's input and like take that and use that to continue your writing.
Yeah. And I would say there's a lot of value in having other writers look at your work and input into it. I would say if I had to choose between someone who's not a writer but believes in me and a writer who is trying to tear me down,
one brand of writing,
or trying to advance their own agenda, I will take the person who believes in me.
Yeah.
So, you know, which is not to say there's not value in having other writers give input, and that you can't, even someone who's being highly critical for the sake of being highly critical, that you can't still take good notes from that and incorporate and become a better writer from that. But you need to have positive voices, because creative endeavors are hard and they're long, particularly if you're writing novels. You know, it can easily take a year or more of your life invested into it, and it can be hard to keep going. And so you need those people encouraging you, who believe in you, who believe in your writing, even if they're not writers themselves and can't give technical or creative feedback. Like that person going like, I love this story, keep writing it, what happens in the next chapter? Like, it helps keep you going.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. What was the best encouragement or advice you've ever gotten from anybody, either a writer who's critiquing your work or somebody who's just reading your work, somebody who's not a writer. Do either of you have an instant like that you can think of?
Yeah, my wife thinks my writing's hot.
Those are her exact words.
Yeah.
I have to preface
All right.
his writings are usually for children, so it's not. His writing is very good. I'll just say that. I will agree to a certain extent. It's very good.
I will agree to the furthest extent.
So Daniel, have you ever had encouragement or from a writer or anybody, a reader?
Yeah, I mean the thing about my brother, sure. And then I think I had an English teacher in 8th grade, which is Shriver, I want to say was her name. And bless her, she was putting up with a lot. And at some point, like I remember after class, she asked me to stay back. And then some other teacher came and visited her before she could actually say anything. And so they were basically having their own conversation. And I'm just sitting there like, should I go to my other class now? Like, I don't know am I in trouble? And then like right at the end of the conversation, like she was like, I'm sorry, Daniel, I have to go. But I just want you to know, like you get it. Like
wow.
You know, a lot of these other kids are not trying, and then some of them are trying, and then I see you trying, and I know sometimes it's hard work, but like I'm seeing you get it, and you get it, and I'm so excited to share my class, you know. And it may have just been like I'm recognizing the effort kind of comment, but it actually felt like she was talking about, you know, like I'm getting through to the heart of the material and it's getting back to me, and there's some resonance going on there, and she was recognizing that. I don't know.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's great. Timothy, did you ever have a teacher that did something like that for you?
No, not really.
Sorry.
I was mostly homeschooled, and
hey.
What does that say about your parents?
Or partially homeschooled. I was really self-taught because my little brother took all my mom's attention.
Yeah, same here. The reason I asked is because when I went to college, I was the same way, Timothy. But when I went to college, my first semester, I had this English professor who has now passed. He was fantastic. And I remember what he would do is he'd come into class. It was like almost like a Professor Snape and Harry Potter, where he like breathed, like he came in and was like, all right, here we go. I'm teaching you about whatever. Yeah. And it was awesome. Like, and it was my first experience in a classroom, and it blew my mind. I was like, and what he would do is he would give us an assignment, and every Friday we had to have a paper written. So every single Friday we had to have a new paper written about the subject that you talked about on Monday. So, and this was the first time that I've ever like written papers, taken, tests and quizzes, especially on a regular basis.
Because
and it was
you were
just like,
okay.
Because I was homeschooled. So it like was blowing my mind. And the first Friday, he picked my paper, and he read it out loud in front of the whole class, because that's what he would do. He would just go around and pick random students, and then he would read them out loud, and he would rip them apart. And I was like, oh, but it was exactly what I needed, because the first one that I wrote was really not good. It was really bad.
Did he ever circle back to you?
So he ripped it apart, and he said, you need to work on this, 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 and this. And so he would take in the papers of the people that he didn't critique out loud, and he would critique them and give them a grade or whatever. Yeah. And by the end of the semester, he walked up to me, like he would walk through the class, like, and just kind of like look at people and then pick them, or he would like walk by and just look at them and then continue on. Yeah. And yes, exactly. So he like came to me, and he like looked down at me, and he was like, and he like took it and he read it out loud, and he said, can you guys believe the change that Caleb had from the first week to this week. This is an A+ paper, whereas my first one was not. It was really
Good for
bad.
him.
And
Good
I was
for him.
like, that gave
good
me
for you.
so much inspiration, and that blew my mind. I was like, this is the best teacher I've ever had. I've only had college was a weird bag of tricks for me, or a mixed bag, I would say, maybe not bag of tricks, but a mixed bag. I had some good teachers, and I had some really, really bad teachers. And
But
the
just
good
like every
ones,
Halloween.
yeah, the good ones have stuck with me. I still talk to some of them, and the bad ones, I don't even know. I gotta let them go. But that I'm interested to hear more stories like that. If other writers have more stories like that, if you do, leave some comments. I would love to hear some more stories like that. Let me know.
I do want to say, Timothy, I am sad that you never had that opportunity to be not just recognized, not just seen,
Yeah.
but like, lifted to your proper height. Like everyone needs to see over the foundation of their own sort of miserable childhood. Like everyone needs to be lifted over that before they can actually see what else is there. And I'm sorry you didn't have that. I think your grasp of fairy tale, like, I mean, it's obvious you were reading them since you were a kid, because like your grasp of fairy tale is immediate and succulent and just like head and heart together, like every time. Like it seems like it doesn't cost you any work, and I know it does, but just you get the simple bits, and you basically, like, it's what if Grimm and Disney actually were friends, and I realize Grimm is two people. That's not the point.
Yes.
And they actually
if all of
convinced
them were
each other.
friends.
Yes, if all of them were friends, and they actually convinced each other to modify one another's work until there was some sort of synthesis that that worked the soul and the heart and the mind, and it actually worked on paper as well. I rambled. I'm sorry.
No, that's great.
But,
I mean,
thank you.
I think the note that we always gave to you, Timothy, especially to your after the Lightbringers, everything after that, I think that we constantly told you this feels like a Disney movie, like an old Disney movie, and like a fairy tale. So like that makes so much sense. Like that's perfect, and it is really great. I mean, I want to share your stories, your series with the world. Like I want them to get out there. So like, let's go. Come on, let's get published.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. This is our first episode. Hopefully we'll have tons more. Tell us what you liked. Tell us what you would like to hear about. If you want some advice, let us know in the comments. Tell us what subjects you would like to hear. And like I said before, we're going to be reading each other's works. So be sure to pay attention or look out for that. And share this with a friend. Like us, subscribe, share, all the usual stuff. We're all bad at promoting ourselves, so it would be awesome if you guys could help us promote. It would be great. If you like our stuff, please promote us. If not, then thank you for joining us, and thank you for watching this long. Please give us a shout out, and look for us on everything. We're going to start on YouTube, and then hopefully we're going to branch out to go to a bunch of different places. But as you know, we're on YouTube because you're watching us or listening to us on YouTube right now. So thanks again so much for joining us on our first episode, and be sure to join us for our second. Thank you so much, guys.
Love you guys.